Morning all, I'd like to show you an amazing game of Mikhail Botvinnik played against Sammy Rzeszewski in the AVRO tournament in the Netherlands 1938, one of the very strongest tournaments ever organised up until that point. So Sammy Rzeszewski was a famous child prodigy and leading American chess grandmaster, a strong contender for the World Chess Championship in the mid-30s to the mid-1960s, so quite a long time. He was a great contender. He came equal third in the 1948 tournament and equal second in the 1953 candidates tournament. He was an 8 times winner of the US Chess Championship, an outstanding match player throughout his career. He excelled at positional play and could be a brilliant tactician when required, but he did take a long time over his opening moves and often found himself under time pressure. So, okay, in this game, Mikhail Botvinnik kicked off with c4, the English opening, and we have e5, so it's a kind of reverse Sicilian with a tempo down for black, this line. Knight c3, knight c6, g3, g6, bishop g2, bishop g7. So both sides fianchettoing. Now e3, which often implies knight e2 and then d4, even though black's got a lot of pressure on d4 at the moment. If white can play for d4, that will be increasing white's piece mobility and space in the center. Let's see, d6, knight ge2, knight ge7, and now here it comes, d4. Okay, let's put on a kibitzer at this point, and the most usual move is just to take here on d4, which is what Rzeszewski played. E takes d4, and now both sides castle, and now knight f5. So a question is put on this pawn. It's best, I think, what was played, just to play d5 here, although it looks as though c4 is a bit of a vulnerable pawn. What has white actually gained here? Well, he's gained control of the d4 square a little bit more, dislodging the knight on c6, but he has to deal with c4. That can be dealt with b3 without any tactical disaster occurring here. Black now plays a5, and now bishop b2 is played. So double fianchetto. Knight d7, and now we see a3 as if white is interested in b4 and maybe later c5 to try and undermine this pawn chain. And actually we see black tempting that now by playing knight c5, so with tempo, a bit provocative you might think. b4 is played, the knight just jumps back. So with c4 a little bit weakened, perhaps black is now threatening things like knight b6 and knight e5 just to expose c4 again. So it's committing white to do something here about c4 potentially. And we see the move queen b3 being played. Okay, so at the moment it's actually about equal. It looks as though c5 is held down with the knight on d7 at the moment, but white does enjoy a little bit more space here and can try and get rid of black's defensive bishop around his king with a move like knight e4 at some point. We see actually here black playing knight d4, and this does potentially expose a little bit of king safety issues if this bishop is removed. We see white taking that, bishop takes, hitting the bishop with rook a d1, bishop goes back, and here it looks as though white has a pleasant position out of the opening. Perhaps a move like knight b5 isn't too bad, just trying to exchange off these bishops. We see actually instead rook f e1. So what's the idea of this? Well, I think actually if rook e8, the knight might be jumping to hit c7. Let's just check this for a moment. Rook e8, I think white can just take here and play knight b5 hitting c7, which is a bit annoying for black. He doesn't want to lose possession of the e file. If he has to play a move like this, then I think white's getting a clear advantage, and even pushing through with c5 here. So this is a bit of a tricky position already. It's a bit unpleasant for black, Black tries A takes B4. We have A takes. Now knight F6. And the knight might want to use G4 at some point, or the bishop might want to play bishop G4 to annoy the rook. This is ruled out with H3. And we see a slight weakening in theory of the king side with this next move, H5. Maybe black was a little bit concerned about the possibility of a later G4, just to try and cramp black a little bit more. So H5, and we see now C5. So white's expanding now in the centre. Bishop F5. But is black solid enough here for this not to be such a problem at the moment? Knight B5 is played, so the knight's difficult to evict. Any C6, we've got knight takes D6. The bishop just drops back here to attack it, and this might not be the most accurate move in the position, actually. If we just go back here, this might be the first kind of little mistake here. White is slightly better anyway, but what is white actually threatening? Maybe positioning just knight D4, and then C6 might be interesting, or rook C1, just trying to build pressure against C7 if taking, or C6. These two options, CD or C6, need to be factored in. But with this next move, bishop D7, C6 is with tempo. It's difficult actually to suggest a great move for black here. The engine is suggesting rook E8 actually here. Well, the knight can take here. Rook takes, knight takes, and that shouldn't be maybe too bad, this position, but it's not that pleasant. Positionally, white is having a great time here. It seems to be a nagging advantage. But if black is solid enough, this might be sustainable. But yeah, we see this move bishop D7 here in response to this, and it does invite with tempo a space gain C6. And you might not think this is too harmful. After all, the bishop seems blocked in by its own pawns. Black plays B takes, and now D takes. And here, there's some problems actually in this position. It would seem as though surely if you're playing black, okay, you might be tempted with bishop F5, but actually bishop F5 runs into knight D4, and what does black play here? Is the bishop going to go all the way back? If it goes all the way back, then B5 looks interesting. For B6 as a potential threat. Squashing black on the queen side. And the thing is, bishop E6 doesn't seem that palatable, because actually there does seem to be a powerful exchange sack here. Rook takes E6. Maybe even stronger than taking is to play knight D4. And then taking like this. It doesn't look very pleasant for black. Although there's a pin here. Okay, rook D3 unpinning. Let's go with, in this position, if say rook Fe8, then knight takes C7, and we've got now two connected passed pawns, the queen being pinned. This is actually a huge position for white. So it's actually a very, very tricky position here with these possibilities of an exchange sack. The bishop just drops back. It looks incredibly passive. And can you see what Mikhail Botvinnik plays now in this particular position? If I give you 10 seconds starting from now. Okay, he's actually, if you look at this position, by the way, it is very beautiful. The two rooks and the two bishops like this. It's absolutely beautiful and harmonious. And all of black's pieces seem, unfortunately, to be mostly on the first row still. Disconnected rooks, bishop retreat. It's a terrible position to be in with black from the opening. This is a very big position for white. And white celebrates it with knight takes d6, trying to smash open this diagonal for c7 to win the rook. Horrible move to face. If c takes, yeah, I think we just play c7, and after takes, we just take this rook. Okay, there's bishop takes h3, but here just bishop f3, guarding g4 if needed. It's protected by the queen anyway, so bishop g4. This is just very, very good. It's material up for white. It's fine. There's no big deal about it. So it seems to be a broken position actually after knight takes d6, but black tries now bishop e6, protecting the rook, but basically forcing now this next move, rook takes e6. So we see now, okay, black is technically the exchange up, but white's got huge compensation here, and I think can even just take here with an advantage. There's loads of moves with an advantage, but this next move might be actually one of the more powerful moves available to white. Mikhail is interested in emphasizing his bishop on the diagonal, and he goes for that dark square bishop with knight f5. So a double attack on the queen, and he's going to take that bishop. That's the intention, to celebrate this huge bishop on this diagonal. So, okay, the exchange down, but with two gigantic bishops now. So knight takes g7. This is actually, from an engine point of view, +5 nearly. This position here is +5 because the bishop is also automatically now pinning the knight, which means d7 is not really covered, and we see a rook crashing down to d7. So at the moment, technically, at this very moment, only one pawn for the exchange. So rook f7, and it seems, well, you know, how can white win more material? Well, a very calm move in circumstance now, very powerful move, and engines agree it's actually the strongest move in the position. Can you see what white plays now in this position? If I give you 10 seconds starting from now. Okay, there's actually two very, very good moves. A very good move was played in the game bishop e5, but it seems technically even bishop takes f6 might actually be very strong here. We'll have a quick look at this. For check and f4. So white is having a huge threat here of f takes. As soon as there's like 2 pawns for the exchange, that's great compensation for being the exchange down. But we see another way of trying to get 2 pawns for the exchange down. Bishop e5, just eyeing c7 now. Can this actually be defended? If black tried rook c8 here, it seems queen d3 might be a very good move. So making sure rook takes d7 can be answerable with c takes, but also preparing here queen d4, and this is a really nasty position. If we just have a quick look at this, if black's kind of getting into a zugzwang, a pin zugzwang, he can't really do much here. If king h8, then we just play bishop takes f6. That rook's pinned. It's a horrendous position. If rook b8, then we could just intensify the pin and threaten bishop f6, and black's actually forcibly losing material here. So this is a horrendous position. If rook c8, it's just hopeless. Just queen d3 to d4 seems a very incisive maneuver here. Black tried king g8. It is losing control a bit of g6 here. Something to bear in mind, but also allowing the c pawn to go. It's 2 pawns for the exchange. Rook takes c7 now, so massive compensation being the exchange down. Rook takes, bishop takes, and 2 connected pass pawns on the queen side. A check is thrown in, king h2. There's no other major check which does anything here. The rook stumbles back, bishop e5. Huge position for the 2 bishops and the 2 connected pass pawns. Something has to be done about the knight. It's humbly protected. But now c7, black is totally overloaded on both sides of the board. Knight d7, and now this is answered neatly with a beautiful move, crushing move. Although white's position is absolutely crushing in any case at this point, But what would be a very neat move to play here, if I give you 10 seconds starting from now? Okay, Queen C2, double attack on G6 and threatening C8 queening. Black tries Rook F8, which does protect both, but the Queen protects that and here. But now, the final move of the game, can you spot it? Black is actually overloaded here. In any case, this wasn't really enough, because what does White play here? Okay, I hope you spotted it. The Queen is overloaded actually. C8 queening, just distracting the Queen from G6, and Black had to resign. If Queen takes, then Queen takes G6 is mate. So this is, I've actually shown you on this channel the set of 3 wins that Mikhail Botvinnik had in the AVRO tournament of 1938. And I think it's an important tournament historically before World War II. And then we're going to have to visit AVRO in 1948, which was to decide the world champion after World War II. So I thought it was key for the Evolution of Style series to show you Mikhail Botvinnik, his win against Capablanca, against Alekhine, and now against Rzeszewski, who was a contender in the 1948 tournament. I think we also need to examine other key players like Paul Keres, because he was a leading contender. But this was a power game, if you look at it, not using a very sharp theoretical opening, but a kind of positional opening, and just getting, you know, big positional trump cards out of it. Playing quite quietly, it seems, with A3 and B4. It looks as though this is a bit of a harmless plan, but actually White was building up a big positional advantage here, formidable, a very, very beautiful position at some point. It just looks, this position, you just cannot have this position against a strong player as Black. It's just asking to be thumped, and it was with knight takes D6. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that. Comments or questions on YouTube. Thanks very much.